The bill lands face down in the middle of the table. Nobody reaches for it. Nobody ever does. You already know what's about to happen. Before the waiter even turns around, you're already doing the math. Level 1, the group chat. It starts innocently enough. 6 names, 1 group chat. It used to be about nothing. Memes, gym check-ins, who's down this weekend. Somewhere over the last 2 years, without anyone announcing it, the thread quietly became a logistics channel for a life you can't quite afford. Dinner reservations at places where the cheapest entree is $34. A ski trip suggestion that gets a dozen fire emojis before you've even finished reading the price per person. You don't say no right away. You never say no right away. You say, let me check my schedule, which is the socially acceptable version of doing math you don't want anyone to watch you do. Sometimes you mute the thread, not because you're angry, just because you need a few hours where you're not reminded, notification by notification, of a life that's moving a little faster than your bank account can keep up with. Eventually, you unmute it. You always do. Because being left out somehow hurts more than being broke. Missing the plans feels worse than paying for them, and that calculation, that specific quiet trade, is one you'll make so many times over the coming years that it stops feeling like a decision at all. The first rule, in a rich friend group, the group chat isn't a conversation. It's a bill you just haven't seen yet. Level 2, the dinner. 8 people, a restaurant somebody's coworker recommended, small plates that cost more than your usual weekly groceries. You order the cheapest thing on the menu that doesn't look like you're ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. A distinction that matters more to you than it should. A skill you've built without ever deciding to build it. You nurse 1 glass of wine through the entire meal while it gets refilled around you, like the table has its own weather system you're not participating in. Then the check comes, and someone, it's always someone, never anyone you can predict, says the 4 words that will define your financial year. Let's just split it. Nobody asks if that works for everyone. Nobody asks because for everyone else at the table, it obviously does. You do the silent math while everyone's pulling out their phones for Venmo. Your $22 salad and glass of the house wine just became $71, and you smile and send the payment and tell yourself it's fine. It's just this once. You'll figure out the grocery budget later. You always tell yourself it's just this once. It's never just this once. The second rule, splitting the bill evenly, only feels fair to the people for whom the bill was never going to matter. Level 3, the trip. Someone finds a deal. 4 days in Tulum, $1,400 a person before flights, and the group chat detonates with excitement before you've had a chance to feel anything except the specific, sinking recognition that this is the moment you're going to have to say something out loud. You don't say it, you never say it directly. You say, I might have a work thing that week. A lie so transparent that everyone quietly understands what it actually means, and nobody quietly acknowledges that they understand it. This is the unspoken rule beneath the unspoken rule. Everyone in the group already knows who's tight on money. Nobody says it. Saying it would require admitting that the group has a hierarchy, and hierarchies are only comfortable for the people standing at the top of them. Someone offers to spot you the flight. It's said casually, warmly, meant kindly, and it still lands like a diagnosis. You say no thank you, too fast, in a voice that comes out sharper than you meant it to. They don't bring it up again. You spend the trip dates that everyone else spends in Tulum, sitting at home, liking their photos, writing so jealous under a picture of a rooftop pool, meaning it and hating that you mean it in equal measure. The third rule, you don't get invited less because they've stopped caring. You get invited exactly the same amount. The exclusion is a math problem, not a social one, and math problems don't apologize. Level 4, the apartment. 2 of them get a place together. 3 bedrooms, a doorman, a view of something that isn't another building. You visit for a housewarming and do a specific kind of arithmetic in your head while you're supposed to be admiring the kitchen island. Their combined rent is more than double your entire monthly income. You don't say this. You say the place looks amazing, and you mean that too. And both things are true at once. The admiration and the quiet vertigo, sitting next to each other without canceling out. Someone mentions offhand that their parents helped with the deposit. Said the way people say things they don't think are remarkable. Not bragging, just narrating a fact that's been true their whole life and never once occurred to them as a variable. You nod. You've learned to nod at facts like this the way you nod at weather. Something you have no leverage over, delivered without malice, that still rearranges the room slightly every time it's said out loud. The fourth rule, the biggest gap in a friend group like this was never the vacations. It was always the invisible floor everyone else was standing on that you had to build yourself, one paycheck at a time, from nothing. Level 5, the wedding. One of them gets engaged and the group chat becomes something closer to a logistics company. Bachelorette in Nashville, $650 for the weekend not counting flights. A dress code for the wedding itself that requires a specific shade of formal you don't currently own. A gift registry with the cheapest item priced at $85. You do the full year math on a Tuesday night alone on your phone's calculator app, and the number makes you put the phone down and stare at the ceiling for a while. You go anyway. You always go anyway, because this is the friend who mattered, the one who was there for the parts of your life that had nothing to do with money. And you're not willing to let a number decide whether you show up for her. You put the bachelorette on a credit card you tell yourself you'll pay off next month. Next month arrives with its own list of things you'll pay off the month after that. This is how debt starts for people like you. Not one reckless purchase, but 100 reasonable ones. Each individually defensible, each one a yes you couldn't figure out how to turn into a no. The fifth rule, the friend group never asked you to go into debt. They just kept living lives that assumed you already weren't in any. Level 6, the comparison you didn't ask for. Somewhere in year 3, you stop hearing the specific numbers and start feeling the general shape of them instead. A kind of financial peripheral vision you didn't have before and can't turn off now that you do. You notice the brand of everyone's jacket without meaning to notice. You clock which friend's car is leased and which one is owned outright, a distinction nobody discusses but everyone somehow already knows about everyone else. You've become fluent in a language you never chose to study, and the fluency itself feels like evidence of something you'd rather not have evidence of. A friend mentions casually that they're thinking about switching jobs, even though the new one pays less, because they don't need the money and they want to feel more fulfilled. You nod along, and something in your chest tightens in a way you don't examine too closely, because examining it means admitting that not needing the money is a sentence that has never once applied to your life, not for a single day of it, and probably won't for a long time. The sixth rule, it's not envy exactly. It's the specific loneliness of loving people who are running a completely different race and don't know there are two races happening on the same track. Level 7, the moment you almost say it. You're at dinner again. Always another dinner. Dinners are where this entire dynamic lives and breathes. And someone suggests the tasting menu, $145 a head before wine, presented as a suggestion the way things are only ever presented as suggestions among people for whom the suggestion was never actually optional. You feel the words rise in your throat. I can't afford that. 4 syllables. The truest sentence you could say at that table. And the one sentence you've never once said out loud in 3 years. Of exactly this scenario repeating itself in a dozen different restaurants. You don't say it. You order the tasting menu. You'll figure out the rest later. The way you've figured out the rest later every single time before this one. Later arrives with interest, literally a credit card statement that makes you wince in a parking lot after work, alone, where nobody can see your face do what it does when it sees a number like that. Here's what nobody explains to you about this specific silence. It's not pride, not exactly, and it's not shame either, though it borrows heavily from both. It's the fear of becoming a different person in the group's eyes the second the sentence leaves your mouth. Not the friend, but the broke friend. A label that, once spoken aloud, can't be unspoken. A role that, once assigned, becomes the lens through which every future invitation gets filtered, softened, adjusted, pitied. The 7th rule, silence about money isn't dishonesty. It's the last form of dignity available to someone who has already given up every other kind of control in the room. Level 8, the friend who notices. Not everyone in the group is oblivious. There's always one if you're lucky, who starts suggesting the cheaper spot without being asked, who texts you privately before the group makes a plan to ask what works for you specifically, who once, quietly, without an audience, said, hey, we don't have to do the expensive thing every time. You know that, right? And you remember exactly where you were standing when she said it. The specific weather, the specific light, because it was the first time in 3 years someone had said the quiet part out loud without you having to be the one to say it first. It didn't fix anything financially. One sentence doesn't erase a group's collective momentum toward restaurants you can't afford, but it did something else, something you didn't know you needed until it happened. It told you that at least one person in the group had been doing the same math you'd been doing, silently, on your behalf this whole time. You'd assumed you were invisible in this specific way. You weren't. You were just the only one saying it out loud, even to yourself. The 8th rule, the friend who notices your bank account without you mentioning it is worth more than the friend who never has to notice their own. Level 9, the year you start saying no. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens the way most real changes happen. Badly, inconsistently, with backsliding you're embarrassed about later. You say no to one trip, just one. You brace yourself for the group chat to feel different afterward, colder, like you've announced something you can't take back. It doesn't. Nobody says anything. The plans happen without you, and you feel the sting of it exactly the way you predicted. And also, this is the part you didn't predict. You feel something close to relief, a small structural relief, like a shelf that's been overloaded finally getting one book taken off it. You say no to the second thing more easily than the first, first. The third time, you don't even feel the old panic rising in your throat before you say it. You start suggesting alternatives instead of just declining. A potluck instead of the tasting menu, a hike instead of the ski trip, a video call instead of the destination bachelorette weekend you genuinely can't do twice in 1 year. Some of these land, some of them don't. The friends who matter start adjusting, slightly, unconsciously, the way water finds the lowest path without ever deciding to. The ninth rule, the version of you that keeps saying yes to protect the friendship is often the same version quietly resenting the friendship for costing so much to protect. Level 10, what it actually costs you. Here's the accounting nobody does out loud, the one that isn't about dollars at all. Every yes you gave out of fear of becoming the broke friend was also a small vote against your own future. A vacation fund that never got funded, a debt that took 2 extra years to pay off, a version of financial stability that kept getting pushed back one dinner, one bachelorette, one group trip at a time. You didn't lose the friendships by being honest about money. You spent years risking your financial life to avoid a 5-second conversation, and the group never once asked you to make that trade. You made it for them, silently, assuming it was the price of belonging, and nobody ever confirmed that assumption because nobody ever knew you were making it. That's the part that stings the most in retrospect. Not that they didn't care, but that they never had the information required to care correctly. You didn't give them the chance. Silence felt like protection. It was actually a tax, self-imposed, collected in full every single time you nodded instead of speaking. The 10th rule, the friend group was never testing your loyalty with every dinner bill. You were testing it yourself, quietly, and grading yourself on a curve nobody else knew existed.